Hey, what's up guys, Diplex here again. Welcome back to Men of War Assault Squad 2 and Born in the Fire America mod. I am so excited to be back here with another American Revolutionary War battle. Now this map is available over on the Steam Workshop. The creator's name is Dan the Strategist, and I do believe that it's titled American Revolutionary War Village or something along those lines. The battle, however, is unfortunately not available over on the Steam Workshop. It doesn't actually come with the map. It is, of course, made by myself. And in the future, I do believe that every single video and Men of War battle will feature a battle that has been made by myself. That has always kind of been the idea behind my channel, that I create the content not only by recording it, but also by making the very battle we see. And I've aimed to do so with maps as well, and I do consider myself a pretty talented mapper. Some other mappers consider me the best, and I wouldn't say that at all. But I do have my own style to the maps I like to make, and I go for photorealism, and I'm very detailed. But obviously, you wouldn't see many videos on this channel if I had to make every single map. There simply wouldn't be enough time. So I'm aiming to make every single battle in the future, but I can't say that I'll make every single map because they're extremely time-consuming. But anyway, so, right, it's been long ago. It feels like it's been a long time since I uploaded regular videos. Like, August in general has been very dry and empty, and I think it's because of many personal reasons. I haven't felt the motivation because I'm a very emotional guy, and if I'm not feeling emotionally right, work isn't gonna matter. And I've been a drunkard. Someone said that in the comment, like, we miss the old Diplex, not the drunkard Diplex. And I mean, it's not like that I've been drunk during my videos or done anything stupid like that. It's just, I said in my previous video, which was the Red Rising video, that I hadn't been uploading a lot because I'd been hungover a lot. And it's kind of stupid, but admittedly the truth. So I don't have to hide that away from you guys. But I'm back on the track now, and I'm aiming to do 7 videos this week. I'm actually, in fact, motherfuckers, I'm gonna do 7 videos this week. That's right, that's a promise to you. Today, Monday, 7 videos this week, and promise to myself to just stay sober and to war through it, to fight through it, because that's what you got to do sometimes. But without getting too off topic, let's get into the details of today's map and today's battle. I am thoroughly excited to see how this one's going to turn out. We have here an American Revolutionary War scenario, a Continental Army regiment that has marched ahead of George Washington's army. He is about an hour away, but they have been camped out here for about 2 days. So they've established some defenses, some positions, and some security measures in case of a British attack. If the Brits do attack this regiment, then they stand no chance of surviving without George Washington's main army arriving later during the day. I do believe they've made it in the nick of time here, because the Brits are indeed attacking, and George Washington is only minutes away. So it's going to be a very tense battle. Now, I've set up a scenario that is definitely a possible victory for either side. It's 50-50. It's all going to depend on the strategy that the AI deploys today, the amount of kills they can receive, and what kind of maneuvering both sides will aim to do. They might be more aggressive, they might be more defensive, and that's what I love about the AI. It's always going to be different. So the Continental Regiment, that is a little ahead of the rest of the army, has set up camp here and defenses kind of in a spread out area in case of an attack, so that they can delay the attackers by fighting them over a larger distance. So they've occupied civilian buildings, they've set up some fortifications, they've dug out some trenches. They've also set up tents, of course, so that people can sleep. They sleep in shifts here. This is not a fully fledged regiment. This is a slightly battle-hardened regiment. This is early in the war. The war lasted for 8 years, and the Continental Army grew in experience, in regularity, in formality, and in discipline, and of course in battle experience over those 8 years. And this is early on, so they have a lot to learn, so to speak, being a newly formed army. We also have, let me see here. We also have a few men sleeping in the trenches themselves, because there's tongue twister. There's just not enough room in the houses and tents that they had with them. We've got a camp set up here, though, and we have the regimental headquarters back here defended by some more artillery, and this is where we have the senior officers. The colonel of the regiment is the man without the hat there. That is the colonel. We have, that's just a captain. let's see here. We have the major over here and the red and white over there, and that's just another captain. I suppose, where's the lieutenant colonel? You know, sometimes you don't necessarily have all those positions and ranks filled out depending on who would have died and whatnot, or the size of the regiment, and, you know, this and that. Regularities, nah. In the heat of the battle, not always the priority. What else do we have? Well, that is the Continental Army side of the thing. This is a very big map, so there's a lot of room to fill out. What do we have here on the left side? Well, this is the interesting bit, and this is certainly what made the American Revolution very characteristic in its fighting and tactics. Is, of course, the revolutionary militia, the colonists who rised up against the governing Brits. And we have here different groups, obviously not as regular and formal as the Continental Army. The revolutionary militia was made up in bands and groups and companies, sometimes brigades, battalions. They could call them a little bit of this and that. They didn't really fall under the same regime as the Continental Army, but they were a little more self-governed, but obviously followed the commands of the generals and whatnot of the American or the Continental Army, seeing as they had the same goal, the same purpose, and whatnot. But we have here different groups set up in different areas here. They come from different villages or towns. Perhaps a town with that wasn't overly, or a village rather, with say 30 or 40 capable fighting men. They would form their own party, and they would obviously sometimes ambush British convoys and whatnot, but obviously they would rather fight alongside with the Continental Army in their own little companies and in their own skirmishing formations. So we might have like Thomas Raiders here, or Parker's Rangers, or whatever they'd be called. They could be 10 men, 30 men, 100 men, or 200 men, depending on the size of the town or area they came from. They usually all came from the same village or town or local area like that. So they'd be very local bands of warriors and fighters, all forming the Continental, or not the Continental Militia, or the Minutemen as they would be called, because they'd have little experience, and they could all grab a gun, a musket, put on a hat, grab a pouch with ammunition and whatnot, and in a minute they would be ready for a fight. Obviously, with little experience, the Redcoats would literally chew these guys down in an open situation. That is why a line battle situation, that is why these men will prefer fighting in the forests and whatnot. So they've got skirmishers set out here all over the forests. They're going to be hard to spot, but their musket flashes and smokes will obviously point out their positions. We have a little camp here. This could be one local, one group of militiamen over here. We have another section here by the bridge. So there's two crossings on this side, which is pretty interesting. These guys could come from a different area. The men over here, back here, could come from another area, and so forth and so on. You catch my drift. You catch my drift. Drifting down this river here. Ooh. And talking about drifting down the river, I have a very nice surprise for you. I don't think it's going to be a surprise because I'll probably utilize it in the thumbnail and title, but very excited for that as well. We also have some Native Americans joining the Continental Army and the Revolutionary Militia today. These colonists here are fighting alongside this small tribe. They've given them muskets and ammunition, and I suppose the Native American tribes at the time could fight with Brits and colonists, or revolutionaries, so to speak, depending on who could ever promise them more territory and more safety after the war. The Native Americans were technically not friends with anyone, because both the colonists and Brits and whoever else were white in the area would obviously occupy their territory. They were all expanding, so they were enemies with everyone. But at the time, they'd have to choose a side or be fighting both, I suppose, and it would go from tribe to tribe. I suppose the active tribes today who have a lot of like areas and a lot of protective rights and whatnot in the area, and are still kind of very much like tribal as not tribal. I'm not saying anyone lives as tribes as they did back in the day, but still have a lot of tradition like that in America today. We're the ones who presumably chose the right side at the time, and I don't know much about that, but obviously you guys could fill me out on that. I don't want to speak out of line here. And in the previous video, I actually took it down. It only got about 2,000 views, so we don't even need to discuss that. But I call them Indians, Plains Indians, which they were actually called. If you Google them, that's their official tribal name, and people thought I called them Indians as an insultive thing, and I don't understand why I would. But anyway, that aside, that is the lineup today. And the winning condition for the Continental Army and militiamen is essentially to hold out long enough for George Washington's reinforcements to arrive. It's that simple. The British objective is to knock out the regimental headquarters. If they kill the regimental headquarters here, they'll have knocked out pretty much the entirety of this army, and that is going to be a big blow to George Washington and his forces. So, having that said, I think we're pretty much ready to get into it. We're going to have 3 different angles of attack, actually 4, but the 4th one is going to be the special one coming down the river. We're going to have a proud British assault heading down this road. No funny business in the forest, no skirmishing. They are heading at them in lines and formations with a good old British regularity and discipline. So it should be a pretty intense battle. I think that's enough talking for me right now. I wanted to explain everything about the battle and whatnot and give you guys a good idea of it. So hey, as long as the battle is long enough, the introductionary length won't matter that much. There's always going to be a hero without a cape in the comment section pointing out when the battle starts. But hey, that's on you, missing out this sweet little historical background about the battle. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. And the battle has commenced. Continental infantry spread out over the area are now engaging the tight British redcoat formation heading down the road. And one could think that that's a pretty, well, unwise idea, like a pretty stupid thing to do, attacking entrenched Continental infantry. But they are in fact not the trick of the battle right now. They're actually the distraction over on this side of the river. The main force is heading down the river in these pretty cool river boats. Now, they're not going to number as many as the troops heading down the main road here on the left side. But hopefully this will be the knife in the heart for the Continental soldiers here near the stone wall and the trenches, making a pretty formidable defense against the redcoats coming down the main road. So far, they're in a pretty tricky spot. But as soon as these redcoats land, I think the tide will turn. 2 boats will continue down the river to the right side to assist the 2 companies assaulting the revolutionary militia located here around the river and the forest itself. So that's pretty cool. Let's send them out. I suppose this would be some American Revolutionary War British SBS, you know? Special boat service heading down. And they're going to be heading straight for the Continental soldiers here. Oh, that's some pretty cool melee. He was like kicked in the kneecap or something. Oh, that guy was just headbutted, it looked like. And the second boat will advance into the forest on the right side. Now they're going to try and outflank this stone wall position. Oh, that's gruesome, because I do believe the redcoats heading down here are doing just minimal damage against the Continental soldiers holding the trenches back here. Like, they're getting some pretty good hits on them just because of the sheer firepower that they're putting out, but they're also quite pinned here, and they're not making a lot of progress. So, ooh, and now some Continental artillery is going to be firing at the attacking redcoats as well, so that's just gruesome in general. But the 2 boat teams have successfully landed, and they're gonna carry the weight of this battle over here. Let's also take the last 2 officers here in the boats and get them out fighting too. Now, this boat just made it to this little center island in between the 2 bridges. They're going to send out their crew. Oh, this guy jumped out ahead of time, knocked one down, and shot the other guy. Now, that is some pretty tricky stuff. So they're going to try and secure this little center island ahead of the redcoats coming down the road. And that'll make their life a lot easier when it comes to crossing. The 4th and final boat is going to land over on the other side, and they're essentially going to be quite isolated from the rest. Now, these are some very formidable men from one of the grenadier companies here of the attacking regiment. They're going to do their little grenadier dance. Now they're all hyped up, and they're going to get out of the boat. And they're going to charge at the militiamen here in the forest. So, once again, as I said previously, they're going to be hard to spot because of the dense forest. but look at all the smoke whiffs and all the fire coming out. So there's plenty of people hiding here. I'd say there's about a platoon of revolutionary militiamen spread out here in this forest. Oh, that was a bloody nice volley from the revolutionaries back here. That must have cut down a few Brits attacking. They're going to be hiding here around a tree and staying pretty tight in formation. And the third boat group is just securing the crossing and bridge in general. Now, over here on this side, the company attacking down this road is not going to cross the river yet because the Redcoats have actually secured it and they're doing pretty well. So they're going to join up with the company attacking over here to the far left and kind of help them clear out this camp. There was quite a lot more militiamen on this side by this shallow crossing here rather than the bridge itself because, well, that's just how it was. And they're going to form like a semi-battalion with overwhelming numbers here attacking the militiamen. Some might even retreat over the crossing. We do see a few revolutionaries trying to pull out. Yeah, they're going to try and cross back here to the rest of the soldiers further back. Some might even try and retreat to the left here alongside the river line and the forest line. Or the shoreline, one could say. But that'll be up to the separate fighting forces here. They're all individuals and they'll all act accordingly. Some might act in larger groups and some might just fight for their own life. But we'll see how that turns out. Let's have a look back here at the Continental Army and their struggle against the Redcoats on this side. Now, the boat teams have done excellent work here, clearing out the stone wall. Some will continue skirmishing here from the forest. They've actually made these men retreat. Look, they're pulling back, so some must have left the stone wall. And because of the flanking maneuver of the Brits now, and they will be pulling back to fight on the other side here by the town. Continental Army artillery firing at the Brits as well, so that's looking very good. And another company was just sent in as reserves to bolster the main force. Or it could have been the rest of the company, one could say. Judging the numbers here on this side, so you wouldn't want to commit an overly large amount heading down the road. Oh, look at that. Because of just the gruesome situation of it all, it's sort of like a forlorn hope. And without the success of the boats, I doubt these Redcoats would have done so well, and I don't think the reserves would have been sent in as well, because it would have just been set to send more men into the meat grinder. But since these defenses here have been cleared out, in with the rest and assault the town. Now they have to deal with the remaining Continental Army on this side and the, of course, artillery. Oh, that's nice. You could hear a scream out there in the forest. It's a very cool scene. It's a very cool picture in general to see these men coming out of the forest. I love the flora, so to speak. Very detailed and nice in the grass here in this open field. Oh. I've always been a very, very big fan of the American Revolutionary War. It's been one of my wet dreams, so to speak, and that sounds kind of weird, but oh, look at that guy just turned into pieces. Oh, that is brutal. But I used to play a lot of Battlegrounds 2 or whatever it was called for a Half-Life mod. And it was very small scale in a way, and it was so cool, and I loved it, and I had seen The Patriot, and I was just such a huge fan of line battles, and there wasn't really any other games at the time that represented it, and then Empire Total War came out, and I was like, I played that for years, and now there's this, and it's just so cool. Then my interest for the Napoleonic Wars picked up, and it kind of overtook the interest for the American Revolutionary War and the line battles and stuff like that. So that's very cool. I could feel more. I could relate to the Napoleonic War more, being Swedish and European and all, rather than the American Revolutionary War, which was still very cool at the time with the fancy uniforms and the red coats and the glorious battles and all. It was just a very, very cool era as well. Now, enough about that. The Redcoats, in a very, very large formation now, are assaulting across the open field, getting into some pretty close and point-blank situations here with the Continental artillery. If this guy fires another one, oh, it actually hit the barricade in front of him, and that's going to spare the life of an otherwise very unlucky Redcoat on just the other side of this wall. I think a few more shots and this artillery might just be out of the game. We'll see if anyone can score a lucky hit on the... Oh, that guy just turned into pieces. He wasn't as lucky the second time around, and that's very unfortunate for him. There's a few Continental soldiers on this side still holding the wall. But in general, it's going to rely on the second line of defense back here by the actual camp itself. And they're going to send out a few men here to the wall to hold them back. We might see a few more pull out of this area, because once this town gets occupied, it's going to turn into the advantage of the Redcoats. They're going to have way more cover than the troops just around here, this field. So they're going to have to pull back. The artillery is still kicking. It's still not been knocked out. But it probably will be in time. So let's leave this flank for a while, and let's head over here to the left side, where the Redcoats have now started crossing this shallow, slowly but safely, and in some very, very large formations. If I were them, I'd try and spread out now and kind of counter-skirmish the American revolutionaries and Native Americans here in the area. Some have pulled back to the other side of the road. Some are pulling back to the cover back here. I think the overwhelming numbers is just too much for them to chew on right now. But the two boat teams that landed on this side aren't doing all too much progress. Some have made it into the forest. Once again, it's very hard to commentate on this very scenario here, just because of the sheer amount of dense forested areas where a lot of the fighting is going down on. But it's gonna kind of straighten out further down the road here once we get to this small town or village and the barricades and all the troops around it. So that's gonna be the next step. But so far, the two boat teams are pretty much the only Redcoats on this side of this forested area in the center. But we do see a lot of Redcoats crossing here on this right side. Some are setting up a bit of a firing line here by the shoreline. Reinforcing militiamen are being sent out to the front barricade here. And right now, if they can bring down the remaining bits of the boat team here, then they'll definitely stand a greater chance against the massive Redcoat assault on this side. And it's in a very dense formation too, so few men can do a lot of damage. They'll stand a very, very good chance of scoring hits on the attacking Redcoats. But once again, the training and accuracy of these men is questionable compared to the well-trained Redcoats over here on this side. And right now, their strengths definitely rely on the numbers. So that's looking very good. And right now, they're just putting so much fire on this this trench here. Native Americans and Minutemen, colonists fighting side by side here. I do see in front of me a lot of the revolutionary militiamen, or I could imagine rather that a lot of them would retreat up here into the hills, and some have already done so to kind of progressively slow down the British assault, to kind of like fire and retreat. It's a very tactical maneuver. It's not turning around and running. It's slowing them down, and that's right now their objective. They need to slow down the British assault. Otherwise, well, they'll stand no chance of victory, even when the Continental Army reinforcements arrive. They need to be able to set up a firm stand. And I'll explain that later on once we get further back. I'll explain how the AI works in this game and how reinforcements really work and how things can really turn out so different depending on the position. But that's something I'll explain once we progress further back, if we even will. Right now it looks like the Continental militia here have set up a very good firing line. Look at that. They're kind of staying low. I'd like to see them move up a little bit more. Some are even starting to do so. To move up here to the cover and to hold this position, to hold this crossroad. Or this junction, rather. It's not a crossroad entirely, but you catch my drift. This trench here is being knocked out entirely. What a gruesome scene. They're just laying over the cover here, drenched in blood. And this is turning into such a tricky scenario. They're all going to be point blank and shot down. Oh, look at that bugle call to advance. That's epic. They're going to start moving left now.